Mr. Chair, I have to say I don't think that effort of abuse from the former leader of the Labour Party, who took them to their historically low defeat, Mr. Goff, is going to impress David Cunliffe one bit, and he calls out to me, just stick to the issues. Well, I have just endured 10 minutes of unmitigated personal abuse from that man, and he tells me to stick to the issues. Well, for goodness sake, I am so sick of listening to that sanctimonious rubbish that he has been speaking for 10 years, when he was the worst Minister of Justice in 20 years, the man who oversaw the increase in the prison population from 5,000 when he came into office to 8,500 only 9 years later. An appalling record for a man who wants to now suddenly put himself on his white horse and say he's there for justice. No, he's not. He's hopeless. He always was. He still is. Now, having said that, and I think it's important to actually let him know what we all think about him. Let's look at this. He's talked a lot tonight about the regulatory impact statement. Well, that's a good thing to talk about, except, of course, that was done before all of the changes that were put in by the Select Committee, all of the changes that the government has agreed to, all of the effort. And he talks about submissions from the expert panel advisory group, and actually, of course, and that was before all of the changes that came through. And, of course, what we now have is a bill that is very sensible, very right down the medium track, and actually puts children first. Because despite that, member, I don't believe that we are here in Parliament to feather the nests of professionals, but actually we're here to help professionals do the right thing for people when needed. Now let's just look at what's happening in legal aid all around the world. I went to have a look at what's happening in California in family law. And they have mediation, they have all matters going through mediation, even matters relating to domestic violence, which I just did not believe we should do. Having said that, they said to me they have no legal aid assistance for family law matters. And I actually don't think that's right. And Mr. Goff now says that that means I think that's a good idea. Well, I've just said, Mr. Goff, you only open your silly ears. Listen to it, man. And of course, then we now look at the UK. They have severely cut access to legal aid in family court matters, because just like us, they have seen what has happened to legal aid. And that man, Mr. Goff, he oversaw a 70% increase in legal aid. This was, he says, all about adjusting fees. Actually, what it did do, Mr. Goff, is it meant that a lot of people got hauled through court by their former partner, because that partner now had something, a stick, to hit and beat that other partner with. And that is not acceptable. And when he talks about the great legal issues, well, let me just ask him this. What great legal issues? Family court law, care of children is actually, there are not great legal questions that need to be debated for hours and hours. What needs to be debated in every single case is what's in the benefit, what is in the best interest of the child. Best interest of the child. Now, Mr. Goff, you had your say. I sat back and I listened to that abuse from you. Why don't you just take some facts for a change? And instead, of course, he can't. Because Phil Goff is a failed Labour Party leader, the worst Labour Party leader they ever had, and frankly, I would have thought Phil Goff would have fought. Oh, you big girl's blouse, honestly. I'd say to Phil Goff this. Phil Goff, you could do with a bit of mediation in your group at the moment, and your Labour Party family. It might be helpful. Having said that, let's stick to what the facts really are. So Part 4 amends the Legal Services Act 2011 to redefine when eligible parties may apply for legal aid. And what it does do is that parties can still apply for legal aid. I'd like people not to remember anything Mr. Goff said, because he was wrong. People still can have legal aid for a lawyer to act for them in international child abduction applications. They can also apply for legal aid when a court directs that, Mr. Chair, an application be heard in conjunction with the application, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Judith
Thank
Collins.
you. Under another Act, an application proceeds to a hearing. Oh, he didn't tell us that, did he? Parties may be represented at a settlement conference. So, yes, legal aid is available for those who need it. And eligible parties will be able to apply for legal aid for most without notice applications. And, of course, without notice applications, if Mr Goff would only read the bill that he's so busy talking about, actually mostly he was talking about me, frankly, to be perfectly fair, if he'd only read that, he would see that those are matters relating to violence, those are matters relating to urgency, those are matters relating to issues where a child is at risk. They are all without notice applications, and for those, legal aid will be available. So some without notice applications won't be eligible for legal aid, but the vast majority of them will. And the ones where they're not eligible for legal aid, that's where only one applicant is affected. No one else is affected. Where the matters are merely routine, or the other party is dead or can't be found. And that seems pretty fair to me. Pretty difficult to sue a dead person over care of children issues. And legal aid will also be available where a judge directs an application commenced on notice is to be proceeding without notice. Eligible parties will still be able to apply for legal aid when they want to consent to orders at a settlement conference. So they will, in fact, get the legal advice that we've been told tonight by the Labor Party they won't get before they agree to all sorts of things, the settlement conference. Yes, they will, and they've been advised by a judge to obtain the legal advice. And finally, the Government SOP amends Clause 71 to clarify eligible parties cannot apply for legal aid for legal advice and assistance where they're proposing to commence or respond to Care of Children Act 2004 proceedings. The Government will be funding the legal support prior to the Care of Children Act proceedings outside of the legal aid budget, so they'll still be funded. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr Chair, to correct some of those. And Mr Little goes 1 hour of advice, 1 hour of advice. Actually, Mr Little, you talk about parenting through separation. You know this. You were on the committee most of the time. Parenting through separation. You've got Family Dispute Resolution Service, a service that was absolutely widely promoted by the expert advisory panel, a point that has been completely ignored by the Labor Party tonight. And, of course, there's also legal aid where it's needed. And judges will have far more authority and ability to deal with issues in a finite way, so that people are not consistently going back into court, relitigating the same issues time in and time again, and actually all to detriment not only of themselves but to their children.
Chris Farfoy.
Thank you very much.